Hello, 80s receiving students and teachers. Thank you. Take your seats. Okay, students, you have been given a homework to do in our previous lesson, receiving students and model class. I hope you have your homework done. Let's go through the homework question. But before we do that, we looked at, in your previous lesson, you looked at biodegradable materials. Before we correct our homework, let us understand this word or go through this word biodegradable. Bio means living things or life, and degradable simply means able to be broken down. So when you hear the word biodegradable, you know that simply means life and able to be broken down. Okay. Now, our homework question was, are biodegradable materials important to you? And you are to give your reason why. Okay. Receiving students, you can tell your teacher. For the model class, let me hear from Churchill. Please, if you have your answer there for the homework, can you please read it out for the class?
Yes, they are, because they help the environment by not causing pollution in a way in which they decay into the soil, and also helps to produce nutrients into soil for plants.
Hands up, receiving students and the model class, if you have your answer same or almost the same with Churchill. Right, good, hands down. If you have something else to share to the class, anyone in the class, if you think yours would be helpful to the others, you can give us your answer. Yowa, thank you.
Yes, what biodegradable materials are important to us. Why? They give nutrients, carbon dioxide for plants, and makes plants grow healthier food. In return, the plants provide me food and oxygen to survive on this earth.
Thank you. So you are now looking beyond and saying that you are talking about recycling again. The plants take in the nutrients from the soil, helps the plant to grow. Other animals, including you and me, feed on the plant, and energy is passed from one person or one organism to another. Eventually that person or that organism die and it continues again. So I'm so happy that most of you have the same answer as what we had from Churchill and Yawa, receiving students. If you have that, very good. Now, class, I have two objects here to show to you. And you have seen these objects in the last lesson. We have the corn cob and a piece of broken bottle. Aquila, you will tell us which of these will decay fast or faster, and give us your reason why you have chosen that object that you think will decay faster. What do you think?
Corn.
Yes, give us your reason why you have chosen the corn cob.
Because it decays.
Thank you. Anyone wants to help him? Good answer. Let's hear from Mary.
Because it can decay to the environment to help plants grow.
Which one?
Corn cob.
And what about the broken bottle? What do you think? Will it decay?
No.
All right. Okay, good. Now, in your last lesson, you looked at the food web, is that right? And we looked at some things. You have gone through this word called decay. The word decay. Decay simply means to rot away, is that right? And we looked at some materials, biodegradable materials that can rot away. And there are some organisms in the soil that we can see, and some of them we cannot see, that help to decay organisms or dead organisms, that help to break down those organisms. So if you think about the broken bottle and the corn cob, those organisms that you went through, like the wood lice, the earthworm, and other living things in the soil, you can also think of bacteria and fungi. Which of those organisms can feed on these two objects easily? Think they can feed on the broken piece of bottle? Right? Now you have already developed your idea on, or your reason to see why those organisms cannot feed on the broken bottle, but they can feed on the corn cob. Okay? Now, in today's lesson, we will do more activity on decomposers, or we will try to observe some things that we will be doing in order to understand what decomposers do to other organisms. The topic for today is on making a compost. Now, I want you all to sit up straight. We are going to watch or view a short video, and I'd like you all, receiving teachers and the students, to please take note as you view the tape. Hello students, as you can see, I am in a flower garden. As we all know that all living things depend on each other. Some animals, including you and me, depend on both animals and plants. Do you sometimes think of how plants grow so beautifully and healthy? Well, plants take in nutrients from the soil. Of course, plants do need sunlight and water. Now, nutrients are made from decaying organisms. To help plants take in nutrients from the soil, we will make a compost. A compost is a natural fertilizer. We will now go on to find out how a compost is made. how to make nutrients for plants without using manufactured fertilizers. Students, here with me, I have Mr. Kwadogi. Hello, Mr. Kwadogi.
Hello, students.
Mr. Kwadogi has taught a lesson on making a compost. Therefore, he is now going to go through the basic steps on how to make a compost. Thank you, Mr. Kwadogi.
Thank you, Ms. Godua and students. Right. Making a compost is very important, and there are two reasons that I can think of which is very important for us to make a compost. Our first main reason is that when we buy manufactured fertilizers, it is costly, and some of us cannot afford to buy those fertilizers. So in that way we make compost as a means of fertilizing our gardens or flower gardens. Our second reason is that manufactured fertilizers can be harmful to our environment. So those are the two reasons that it is appropriate for us to make our compost. I'll go through with the basic steps of making a compost. So students, receiving students and teachers, please do take note of the steps that we go through together. Our step number one is you select an area somewhere at the edge of the garden and clear that area out. That is your first step that you should do. Find a suitable area. Second step is you dig a hole in the area that you have marked. A hole big enough for you to put whatever materials that you need to make for your compost. A third step is that you will put the materials carefully, all materials that you have collected, into the hole that you have just dug. And number four is you water the materials that you have collected. We add water to the materials that we have collected to make it moist and allow the material to make it easy for decomposition. And the fifth basic step of making compost is covering it up using an insulator, which is the old canvas or the floor mat, old floor mat, stock feed bags, or the 10 kg rice bags that you have brought. You cover that up neatly. Make sure that the size of the bag is tucked in the corner of the edges of the hole, so it doesn't allow any moist to escape. That is why we need the insulator to cover the material, so it keeps the moist in the materials that you have just put into the hole. And finally, our last step is you cover back the hole with the soil that you have dug out. Make sure it is covered properly and that the soil is level after you have covered it. So those are the basic 6 steps for making a compost. But we should not forget also our safety when we are carrying out the compost. And that is when digging. We need to be careful when we are digging. So when you are digging, stand where you can easily allow yourself to dig the hole. And thirdly is handling of tools. Make sure you handle spades, the fork, or the shovel that you are using to dig correctly. And do not play with the tools when you are working in digging a hole for your compost. Finally, after all your job is done, you need to wash your hands and wash them thoroughly with soap. And the tools also should be washed, dirt scrubbed off, and stored away neatly in your storeroom. So those is the safety that you should think about. Thank you, students, and thank you, Ms. Godua.
Thank you, Mr. Kwadogi, for the useful information on the basic steps on how to make a compost. Students and teachers, I hope you have taken note of what Mr. Kwadogi had gone through on how to make a compost. Straight after this, you are going to go out and make a compost for yourself, where you will be able to observe and record the decomposing rate of each of those different biodegradable materials. Students, you have already seen the basic steps on how to make a compost. We will go back again just to confirm what you have written during or while you were viewing the tape. We will just go back and please check, receiving teacher and students, of the steps in which you would follow in making the compost. Okay, first step, dig a shallow hole, meaning the hole must not be too deep. It has to be shallow. Number 2 step, you put the materials collected in the hole. You were put into groups to bring different biodegradable materials, and you will use those different materials to put into the hole that you have just dug. Number 3 is to water the materials. Next one, you cover the materials with an insulator. An insulator is, for example, a floor mat, plastic, or any old canvas that you can use. That is called an insulator for the compost. Next step, you are to cover the heap with the soil dug out. That is the last step on making a compost. Okay, I hope you have all listed the steps in making the compost. You will use that when we go out to make our compost. Right. For the model class, because we have 9 groups, you were told to work in 5 groups, so you were put in 5 groups. For the receiving students, your teacher will put you into groups to make a compost. Right, so before we go on to what we have seen or into making a compost, what is the reason why we are making a compost? Can anyone tell me what is the reason for making a compost? Fiona? Fiona A. Tell us one reason for making a compost.
To fertilize the soil for the plants to grow.
Okay, very good. Now, our reason for making a compost, good. First one is to find the decomposing rates in different biodegradable materials. And you will be copying a table shortly, receiving teacher, for your students. And the table will be used to record what you have observed in a certain period of time. So one reason why we are making a compost is to find the decomposing rates in different biodegradable materials. The next reason, Fiona has told us to use the compost for gardening, and we use that to fertilize the soil so that we have good plants growing. If it means for a flower garden, we have a good flower garden using a compost, and for making a vegetable garden, we can also use that to fertilize the garden. All right, let's go back to the groups that we are in and the materials that we were told to bring. For the model class, 1 and 2, grass. 3 and 4, vegetable peelings. 5 and 6, leaves. 7 and 8, papers. And 9, small twigs. Receiving students, your teacher will divide you up, and you will do the same as the model class. This is the table that I want you to copy down, receiving teacher and the group member of each group. Group leaders, you can do that, or you select someone in the group who is fast in writing to quickly copy that table down, because you will be using that table to record your findings or how those biodegradable materials would be decaying in a period of time. Right? For those who are copying, go ahead. The others, please pay attention. The first column here shows the type of material. You will list the type of materials down. I have grass, leaves, vegetable peelings, small twigs, and papers. Weeks and comments simply mean in the first week, we are going to set a date to observe our compost. Right? For example, the model class, every test day next week, after your science class, you will select a group leader from each group to go back to the compost, get rid of the soil, remove the insulator, and record the change that you can see in the compost. Okay, so next week, test day for the model class, you will record. That will be the first week of observing. Then we will go on to the next following week on a test day again after your science lesson. That's going to be the second week of observing. You will write down what you have observed in the compost. We are trying to see the decomposing rate of those particular materials. And we will do that for how many weeks? 3 weeks. Okay. Receiving students, you will do the same, and you will write a summary on the rates of decomposing.
Okay, I think the first decomposing method will be the vegetable peelings because it's a decomposing method, and it can decompose faster than the other materials. And the second will be the grass, then the leaves, then the sticks, and the paper. The paper, it is a non-biodegradable material, so I think it will decompose later than the vegetable peelings.
What I predict in my prediction is the first thing will decay in the grass because it can decompose by living organisms. Then the next will be the plastics, and the final one will be the paper because paper is a non-biodegradable material.
What I predict about making a compost is that All the biodegradable materials can decay, but vegetables peelings can decay easily than others, and it can decay quickly to produce more nutrients for the soil. And you'll see the soil will have rich nutrients than the other materials that we make a compost for the.
All right, class, our summary for today's lesson. Again, the first writer in each groups to quickly copy the summary for the other group members down. Decomposers feed on dead plants, animals, and other organic matter. The next lesson, importance of biodegradable materials. And our materials needed are as follows: samples of biodegradable materials in their decaying stage. If you have a banana that is decaying or something biodegradable that is decaying, please bring that for our next lesson. Receiving teachers, this remaining time you will go out with your students now to make your compost. With that, class, our key word for today is decomposers. Thank you, class, for participating.